Welcome, friends.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
We want to remind you that while you're watching in a live YouTube stream, there's a chat that's part of that Kathy and I can't see, but we have one of our colleagues, Christian, who will be watching it. And on that, throughout the whole of this sharing, you can write comments, what you're sensing or feeling. You can ask a question or ask for something to be considered or thought about, because our last 20 minutes or so of our gathering will be addressing those kinds of things. And of course, if there's some rich stuff that's coming from you, and that's going to enrich the whole sharing. Okay. So as we want to do every time, it's an important conversation for us, something that we call counsel, a kind of spiritually consecrated conversation. We light a candle to symbolize that we're for us creating a new atmosphere, a different atmosphere, calling upon our deeper energies and the higher forces and energies of the world to be in support of what we're doing. So here we go, a little short centering and giving thanks resonance. And we're going to bring our hands to the computer because you're part of our circle. Okay.
So I think we were going to start today with a piece of music.
Yes.
Piece of music, and it's a Sogyal Rinpoche translated a poem from one of his teachers and put it to music.
So just to be clear, a Tibetan Buddhist teacher.
Yes, sorry. And
for some of you, he's the author of the most contemporary version of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, of the Living and Dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we're gonna play that for you, and Alan will.
So we'll use this
us.
for deeply settling,
yeah.
and getting very present here.
Rest in natural great peace. This exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. Rest in natural great peace. Rest in natural great peace. Because sometimes it's wonderful when you really remember what the masters have done and taught. It immediately moves us. It really inspires, connects us. Therefore, we feel a sense of gratitude and appreciation of their work. So, Eugene Rinpoche, in this wonderful poem, he says, "Rest in natural great peace, this exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. Rest in natural. In Tibetan is Rangi Hwachim. Rest in natural great peace. This exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural great peace. To rest, to find rest. Clear? Just really that finding that rest, that comfort and ease, to let go and to just naturally be. Then you see the mind just quietly settle, just like a glass of muddy water. If you don't stir it, the dirt will slowly settle. In the same manner, if you let the mind be in the spacious openness, slowly the confusion or the turbulence of thought and motion settles. Rest in natural peace. Rest in natural peace. This exhausted mind, beaten helplessly by karma and neurotic thoughts, like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara. Rest in natural peace. To rest, to find rest. Clear?
Clear.
Clear.
So just to tie this back to some of what we covered in last week's webinar, when he speaks about, resting in natural great peace, it's that ground that we've been pointing to, that when we seek refuge in being, when we can rest into that ground, that is the place where we can find our deepest resilience, the place where we can keep our hearts open and our minds clear with whatever the waves come. And the exhausted mind is, like we pointed out last week, the consolidation of the assemblage point around me, the me, the ego, separate self-consciousness.
As the center of how consciousness operates in every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Just pause for one moment. We're coming on 8 billion of us who must all go through a stage of development. Like we showed in the diagram last week, the baby, undifferentiated, everything's coming in, everything's coming out. Its attention is everywhere, but and it learns to filter some things. Gradually it understands that it exists and others exist. Gradually it has a sense of time, past and future. And by 8 or 9 years old, at the center is me, this thing called me. Each of us has it. And that me lives in beliefs about, not actuality, beliefs about the past that are remembered, but are also imprinted, somatically imprinted in the body, based on that, it will have whatever ways it will understand the future. And I guess you were going to talk about some of this, but here I go.
Yeah.
And then the use stories.
Take over.
The use stories.
Yeah.
No, and
Yeah,
so
it's
so
fine.
everything's coming. There's no ground. The ground is me in reaction to beliefs about others. The ground is me with my judgments of myself, positive and negative. The ground is me with the past that's justifying my emotions, my moods, my reactions. The past is me. The future is me with the only ways I can kind of positively or negatively anticipate based on what I've lived. Me has no future. None.
Infinite samsara.
Right. Just some form of repetition of what already exists, maybe a little bit of elaboration. A Tesla car, a few thousand years ago, was a travois. It's the same idea, which, haul things in all the way through every form of evolution of industry, right up to an electric car, an elegant electric car. There's nothing new in it, but tremendous technology is part of it. But to have something new, to have a real future, you have to start in the ground of your being. Sorry, went on more than I meant to.
That's okay. No, but this is a conversation. So yeah. But we also emphasize that that we need to outgrow that level of consciousness, and how we talked about the shift from the assemblage point of me to the assemblage point of the aware self process. And then in that, we begin to shine the light of our awareness to all the underlying patterns, judgments, stories, or we continue to be a victim of our circumstances, and these patterns really run the show. So we talked about the movement to the aware self being in the center of the mandala.
And what that means is you have your own thoughts and beliefs, but you have a capacity to hold them up against. You can question them. You can see whether this is a form of identity that doesn't have a true foundation in the deepest morality. Really what we call heart intelligence. So you can see that these are stories about yourselves, beliefs about yourself, but not who you really are. You can see that there are stories about other people, beliefs about other people, about God, about money, about politics, but they're not who any of those people really are. And then the same thing, whatever kind of reaction you're having in the moment is substantiated by selectively remembering in all that ground of memory, the kinds of memories that you can use to justify today's anger or today's sadness or today's sense of unfairness or reactivity. And in the future is just to hope that less of that'll happen and a fear that more of that'll happen. But now you have a awareness. Those are future stories. And you can start to have the virtue of trust, that you have awareness. Oh, those are the past stories. And you gradually sink into a relationship with them that brings forth that virtue of forgiveness. Or the me stories. And you begin to have a relationship with them. And you see what they create in you, what they do to you. And you begin to develop that virtue of humility. And with the you stories, you understand everybody's lost in their stories. Everybody's walking around most of their lives with me as the center. And so you have compassion.
But we also talked in the last webinar too about the things that happen in infancy, in utero, early childhood, any sort of trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, those kinds of challenges that occur before much of the conceptual mind develops. And so in a way that, and these kinds of traumas really have an energetic imprint, like a cellular memory. And we're not going to access those with the rational mind.
No,
because there's no rational
story.
story. Yeah, there's not a story that goes with it. There's not a judgment that goes with it. It's just It's just a kind of state of being in a way, that is ever present, like, like a layer, like an underlying layer of unsafety,
Right.
or an underlying layer of fear, of not good enough, those kinds of things.
Well, yes. So just as a very common example, one of the most common kind of quote stories, me stories, that people report over these many years of listening to what people believe about themselves is this belief: I'm not good enough. I've had people that are, they're making $500,000 as a high executive in a company, the extremely high functioning person who, in this case, I'm thinking of a woman. And in fact, women are more willing to admit that this sensation is in them, or this belief is in them, than men. But it's in men too, in different form. But this notion, I'm not good enough. And when someone says that to me, I say, well, what's the proof? They can never really find it, And then I ask them, well, flip it. What's the evidence that you are good enough? And then they can find a lot. But I said, but that's not the issue, that you're good enough or you're not good enough. Underneath, there is a feeling, there's a sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And it started very early in your life, probably before, as Kathy just said, you had words. And then, so what is that feeling? And then we start diving.
Mm-hmm.
I get everybody to close their eyes. Everybody can resonate to the sense of, wait a minute, I've had that belief, I'm not good enough. And what is the feeling? What is the sensation dynamic? What is the musicality, dark music that's in the body? And you see sometimes there's a hyper alertness. You see sometimes there's, I want to withdraw. Sometimes there's a compensating aggressiveness, a trying harder, a forcing. But underneath, what is the sensation? And what if you could, and every one of us, approaching 8 billion, could realize that sensation is as concrete as a cup, but it's more like a cloud because it can move, it can shape change, it can hide, it can. And Kathy refers to it as a hungry
ghost.
Yeah, because how could you ever make yourself good enough if this underlying sensation isn't addressed and held and felt as a sensation? Oh, this is a cup. Wow, let me feel its contours. Oh, look at that. Feel its weight. You see, oh, this is a sensation. Let me feel it. Where is it in my body?
Mm-hmm.
How does it localize? What are my associations? How does it make, what's the mood? Oh, let me touch this softly. Let me hold it. Oh, now you hold the sensation that becomes the belief I'm not good enough, which isn't true in the first place. And now you're liberated. Now you have some freedom. You've liberated something that started in you before you were verbal. And there are deeper fears, deeper terrors.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other one that everyone can relate to is the desire for happiness. And as this, just wanting to be happy. And it usually ends up, like in accumulating things, or, well, this new car will make me happy, or this new home, or this partner will make me happy. And it may have some temporary satiation, but ultimately it's never going to feed that deep level within us of unhappiness until we do just what you were saying. We really find the sensation in our body. And so it's like the hungry ghost. It's like still constantly eating, but never satiated. And again, we've emphasized this before as well, that this is where a deep relationship with the body is absolutely critical. And oftentimes, especially in our society, we're so head centered. We're so that we're often disconnected even from from our deep feelings, sensations. But learning learning the language of the body is also important, and the body speaks in sensation. It's felt sense. So it's also becoming competent in
Yeah. Last time in the meditation, I had you visualize that you were sitting in yourself and present, and the mandala was around you. This, what I call a mandala being, that your me stories were to the left, your right story, you stories were to the right, the past stories were behind you, future stories were in front of you, and you just sit in that. So what is it that is that at that center? Well, it actually is sensation. That is probably synthesized down the tremendous, the essence and most great contribution of Buddha and Buddhism to the world. And it is simply this: for a human being, consciousness isn't some abstraction. It's not some oneness. It's not some higher and all-encompassing. And those are all the mental stuff, you know. But when you're in the center of the mandala, the language of the now is never thinking. And that's the way you know, as you watch yourself thinking, you go, oh, beautiful. I'm back in that assemblage point of me. Oh, come back. And when you come back, what's there? Well, you can see, you can hear, you can feel, you can sense. All the senses are operating right now, always now. You're breathing, and your body is, if you're really distressed, it's seething with sensation. You know, if you're anxious, there's a very particular quality of music in your body, a quality of sensation. But that's the now. And now you don't have to go to a story why I have this sensation or something's wrong with me. It's just the sensation. Oh, I feel unsafe. Oh, I'm afraid. Oh, now if it's a big fear, you have to have a lot of practice, stronger practice, deeper practice over time. So you begin to see, wow, every time I've reacted, defended, felt unsafe, this was the ally of awakening. This was the ally of love. Because if I can hold this fear, I won't project the fear into my relationships. So I'll be less fearful in relationships. So I'll have more love. And I'll share more love, and there'll be more intimacy.
Absolutely.
So you gotta learn to stand, be human being. Be in that center in relationship to this miracle that was the formation of me, but it's too limited.
And the other piece that's important is, we've talked about how the mind can get caught in stories, confusion, psychosis, but the body really knows truly how things are. It's like you can trust the body in that way. It's like direct knowing, direct experience.
Yeah, a simple example. I was talking to a client very recently, and he said, there's 3 things I want. And I want to be more present. I want to open my heart more, something else. And I listened and I thought, well, those are beautiful aspirations, and that wonderful. But he's a fairly advanced person on this journey. So I said to him, now go into your body, just drop into your body. When you say, I want to be more present, what actually happens? And he goes, oh, I get tense. I said, okay, there's the body telling you that wanting in that way is wrong. That's the body saying, no, that's not true. You don't really want that. And so I said, so what would have to be there for you to want that? And of course, there we go. We land instantly in Buddha's teaching, for example, that for the ego, life is basically dissatisfaction. So for this gentleman, sweet, beautiful man, and very much something I've lived again and again and again and again and touched again and again. It was, I'm not present enough. I'm not enough, right? And if I get more present, then I'll be more enlightened. Then I'll be a better human being. Then I'll be more, but the actually getting more present is letting go of the wanting in that instance. So because what we are emphasizing is At the center of the mandala, everything is sensation. You don't then run away from a difficult sensation
Right.
or anything in your body into thinking to justify it because my mother and my father did this or that, or this happened to me, or that happened to me, or this happened at school, or some trauma happened. You don't go into the past to justify it. You don't hope it'll go away. You don't think about doing more exercise or taking more medication. You stay right there with the sensation, okay? And you
really,
learn.
the sensation really becomes the gateway.
Exactly.
So.
And that's different than working with your stories because, as soon as you stop the story, all the superficial emotions, generally anger and, resentment, tension, they'll just go away. But the ones that don't go away, they're imprinted in the body.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot think your way out of them. You can't positive affirmation your way out of them. They're going to be there. And your positive affirmation is just going to be the proof you're being chased into your mind by a sensation that hasn't been held yet. So how do you learn to do this? That's, how do you learn to make your meditation body-centered? And this is a practice that has been for 25 years for Kathy. And her way of languaging it and living it is beautiful, subtly different than my own understanding, even though I too, because there was so much fear in my life, because there was so much of a sense of unsafety in my life. I mean, I had to be with my body. And the more I wanted to love, the more I had to be with the sensations that made me protective or put me in my head and divisive and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to step now.
Well, I can just give an example
Sure.
of something that happened to me last week, actually. That and again, we've emphasized that it's a practice to learn to be able to stay present with uncomfortable, strong emotions, and it's building that inner muscle. And the more you do it, the easier it is. But surprisingly enough, the other night I woke up, I don't know, it was 3 a.m. or something. And I woke up and I was like, I'm having a nervous breakdown.
Yes.
I was like, I was like, well, this is interesting. I haven't felt this sensation for, I don't know, 40 years. And so I just flip over and
Flip over where? On your back?
onto my back. and just start to breathe with it. So really to presence with it. It's okay. This is a sensation, and begin to.
Which becomes the story. I'm having a nervous breakdown. That's the way the left brain understands the sensation.
Right. And it's just, again, just meeting the sensation, having a relationship with the sensation, breath by breath, and things shift. And then it morphed into a state of just, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to live. And then you stay with that sensation. And eventually, there really was no big story about it. I didn't have any story about it. It was just sensation, and then just staying with it, just breathing with it layer after layer. And eventually I fell into this deep sense of peace. My whole body just felt peaceful. And so I went back to sleep.
We were snuggling.
Yes, that too.
Okay. So, well, yeah, I think sometimes we first start with our own work. That is what's imprinted in us. And I'm very aware that for quite some time now in my life and journey, and with all the people I've worked with, that I'm not working just on my personal psychology, though that comes up from time to time, needs to be addressed again. But these kinds of feeling states that I think you're describing, love, is these don't belong necessarily to personal consciousness, my personal consciousness, or yours, not my. These are collective. Mm-hmm. This is in the world. In the world right now, people are really trying to adapt to a tremendous amount of stress. And there is an imprint of that. And I think we're being called, all of us, all of you who are listening, to be holding everything you're holding, understanding that you're helping others hold it, and that some of it isn't yours, probably.
Yeah.
And it, we are our brother's keeper. That's the deepest meaning of what that is, to be your brother's keeper. It means that you are processing inside of you the very things that everyone else is struggling with, maybe not being able to hold it quite as well, but because you do, I do, or you did that night, through that process of breathing with it, of not turning away from it, of not believing the story, I'm having a nervous breakdown and then panicking, which would, see, if you believe a story, it helps you collapse into a sensation, but not in a way in which you're holding it. You become the victim of it. It controls you. It takes you over. Every time that happens to you, there's only one path right there, that moment. Breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe. And all of this, for people that are really up high in the sky about enlightenment and awakening, we're talking about walking around in a state of wakefulness, of mindfulness, and that it is absolutely necessary to see every sensation as some kind of a gateway or starting point for a relationship, until every sensation is part of your house, part of your internal symphony, your great musical orchestra of instruments. And your music is nuanced. It's your beingness, enriched by all of this. And that is that's why I call it the aware self process, because it's not a thing, and you don't get to the end of it. There's no final enlightenment. There's no unitive state of consciousness. It doesn't exist. Because if it existed, it couldn't know it existed until it became two. And so there we are. Mm-hmm. She's a she and I'm a he, a two. All of that duality and stuff that people, non-dual, let's live in non-duality. No, let's live in heartful, profound, grounded, moral richness, which we can't find until we hold those fears, because they will make us immoral. They will make us cower. They'll make us victims. They'll make us aggressive. They'll make us abusive. Dumb. And that deeper morality, we live in it. It is nature. We're embedded in it. We just can't feel it because we're still with the assemblage point at me and fighting for every scrap of love or power or wealth, which is just our misunderstanding of love. Ooh, let's go. No?
Well, just one last thing that is also, I think, critical. It's in the relationship with whatever sensation is arising within you. It's to be holding it with love and compassion. So when you, in that relationship of meeting the sensation, it's from a place of deep love and compassion for whatever's here, and really the ways in which we close ourselves off and protect ourselves, it has served a purpose at some point in our life, which, kind of like a savior.
Protect us when we're very young.
Yeah, exactly. From just, intolerable pain or, and so just understanding that there's wisdom in all of it. And so not, it's like, okay, I'm going to breathe with this because I want to get rid of it. That just pushes it further away. So it's really important also to, whenever you're meeting, some part of yourself that is difficult to hold, that, just like the touch of a loving mother or father or grandmother, grandparent.
I think we've used the image of the midwife.
Oh,
the
yeah,
experienced
that was another
midwife that is so relaxed around birth that in studies have shown that there are less birth complications when the midwife is experienced versus the midwife who's young and anxious and always checking everything.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say too that what you're talking about in my languaging, I call this the most fundamental law of the present moment. And it's just this: how you touch is how you're touched. So how you touch fear is how fear touches you. If you touch fear with infinite love and compassion, that is, if you're willing to touch it again and again and again, and breathe and feel it, just and softly, curious, gently, lovingly, compassionately, gradually, fear is going to touch you. But as Kathy said, because she's a lot of experience, she went from I'm going to have a nervous breakdown to deep peace in probably what, an hour?
Maybe.
Yeah. So, and that is possible. That you liberate something that seems absolutely awful back to the actual energy that gave it shape. And that energy is actually love, or just, if you want, pure consciousness is too abstract and disembodied. I think of it in your body, it is peace, it is spaciousness. If it's not love, it's such a deep, deep, deep connection to everything and indifference, peace. You're connected to everything, but there's an indifference. It's free. And you get there slowly and surprisingly. I remember once when I was just in this recurrent feeling of terror, right? I called it the dread. And I remember just lying down and going, okay, eat me. And like, bam, it became just spaciousness, silence, peace. Because in that split second, I understood. By surrendering to it, I was touching it so softly it was liberated. It was just liberated in a split second. It doesn't always happen that way. It usually takes quite a bit of work. You know?
Yeah, sometimes like days and days or
right, because what you're actually
years.
working on is not the feeling. What you're actually working on is the consciousness you're bringing to the feeling. You're discovering that wanting doesn't help you. You're discovering that comparing doesn't help you. You're discovering that all the labels and ways of explaining it that doesn't help you. So it's teaching you how to bring really true awareness, not ego awareness. Ego awareness always has an agenda. It always wants something, you know, and it's always basing what it wants on something it remembers. Always. And so you sit down and you're with this, and if it's very difficult to get through and you have to do that again and again, each time it comes up to live in you, what it's actually teaching you is meditation. It's teaching you a true aware self process. And it's also growing up your ego. It's helping the ego mature and become, as you say, an ally.
An ally, yeah.
So let's take a journey. You ready?
Yeah.
I sensed you've been hesitating.
No.
Okay.
Why would I hesitate to journey?
So this is the foundational process of body meditation or body-centered meditation. And by body, we don't mean just what medicine calls this. It's the beingness, it's the aliveness, it's the sense of aliveness that lives in us in all its different forms.
So go for it.
No.
I always lead them. Let you start.
You want me to start the body meditation?
Why not?
All right. I'm surprised.
Well,
It's okay.
mixing it up.
Mixing it up. Okay. So let's just take a few breaths. Big breaths, a little bit bigger, so that you're amplifying the sensation in your chest and your belly. And let your eyes close. And we can do this eyes open as well, but for today, let your eyes close. So awareness is always there. But when the assemblage point is the ego, awareness has collapsed into a smaller dynamic, just engaged with the me and you and past stories and all the sensations that it wants to protect against. Okay, so that what we're doing now is we're giving attention to our breathing. So bring your attention to your breathing, which isn't a me or you or a past or future story. It's right. It's an always now. And you can feel it. There's no right way to feel it. No words are needed. Just join your attention to your breathing so that the breathing becomes an anchor for your awareness, an anchor for your attention in your body right now. So already you can see it takes a little bit of muscle. That the merging, the friendship between your attention and your breathing into this thing we can call breath awareness. It's awareness riding with the breathing, inside the sensation of the breathing, and therefore in the body. Some part wants to watch, comment, wants to make sense of this. So you're always going to feel the tug of war between this, the me consciousness, which has been around forever, and what you're trying to develop, which is an ability to witness that me consciousness and be able to journey with all the sensations. Anchoring with the me, with the breath. You're at the center of the mandala. And as you're breathing in, visualize that you can draw your breath from a limitless source. And that's too abstract, just you can draw your breath from the earth itself. And as you're breathing in, you're following a wave of awareness up through your feet, all the way to the top of your head. And then when it crests at the top of your head, you're following the exhalation down through your body and back out through your feet. And it takes a while to let this visualization become an easy rhythm. So take your time. And maybe you can notice that the in-breath is like a soft wave of awareness traveling up the body, and you can notice what's there in your body. And the out-breath is a soft wave of awareness. And because you can sort of feel it, I sometimes call it energy. The in-breath is a wave of breath awareness, energy up through the body, and then cresting at the top of the head in a way. An exhalation, a down wave of breath awareness out through the body. And as you breathe out, relax. At the end of that exhalation, just be so released, so relaxed. Soften, soften. Follow that exhalation till there's not even a residue of any tension in anticipation of the next in-breath. So now you're presencing in your body, in the space of your beingness. And it's pretty obvious that in the body, certain places, certain sensations may stand out. So you're following that in breath and you're noticing what you're noticing in the body. And you're breathing out and relaxing and releasing the last vestige of muscular holding that's part of breathing. Surrendered. If the mind pulls you away, if you go out to that outer circle of the mandala, just have a smile. It's been its job since it's been its full-time job since you were 8 or 9 years old. And just come back to the center where you're sitting in the ground of yourself. Hearing, feeling, sensation, and the breath traveling up through the body and down through the body. Now let's use the instrument, or the breath awareness as a kind of instrument for relationship. Like what I said before, how you touch is how you're touched. So it's going to be a very curious, gentle, loving touch. And as you breathe in, just notice whatever sensation seems for the moment to be most in the foreground. Again, just relaxing as you breathe out. But as you're breathing in, you're noticing, and you're bringing your breath awareness into that sensation to really begin to feel it. From the inside, all around it, just feeling it, touching it softly. Relaxing, releasing. So maybe it's a tightness in your belly. So you just breathe into it, breathe with it. And you practice, no agenda. As you breathe out and you relax and all the breath tension leaves your body, you also release wanting something to happen. Because that would mean you're not really in the center. You're out in that circle around you. And you're out, me always wants something to get better or not get worse. Me wants to be a good student, learn the lesson, do it well, pass the exam. And this is just intimacy, just feeling. So what happens to this tension, this tightness? Does it change? You notice. It changes by itself. You don't have to want it to change. Maybe it doesn't want to change. That's okay too. You just touch it softly with curiosity and patience, tenderness, compassion. It's like playing a game with the softest of feathers. How soft can I touch this tightness or this pressure or this ache? So maybe it's tightness in your neck or holding in your shoulders. Maybe it's some tightness around the diaphragm and breath doesn't feel quite easeful. Don't try to change it. Go to the sensation, feel it, tenderly, gently, curiously. It's like you're listening to a piece of music and suddenly your attention is drawn to the flute. And then it goes to the strings. And then you begin to hear the low rumble of the bass, with the brightness of a horn or trumpet, saxophone. It's like that in your body. And then you're hearing the whole music with each breath, relaxing as you breathe out, noticing the different instruments, the different tonalities, the different textures, tightness. Just touching it, softening, practicing. You don't have to understand it. So let go of wanting to understand it. That would mean you're in that outer circle. Or wanting it to change. It would mean that's the awareness of your ego, not fully connected to your aware self process. And you're in your body. What's the atmosphere? What's the weather like?
And sometimes it's a particularly strong sensation or overwhelming, in fact. And if you find yourself, your awareness collapsing into it, just again, taking that breath. And you can also expand your field of awareness so that you're grounding into the spaciousness, and then from that place, touching it.
Over the years, I've learned that when I'm bringing my awareness to something and it seems very fixed or stuck, that I'm not bringing, let's say, the right wavelength or the right quality of attention. It's the quality of the touch. Maybe my touch has to be more trusting. It's almost like you're turning the dial on a radio until you can really tune in. I guess there are no dials on radios anymore, but so you can really tune in. So you go out into that spaciousness, like Kathy says, and you come back and you realize, I'm coming back. Nothing. This isn't moving back into its essential energy. I'm probably I'm probably still wanting too much, or let me relax wanting. I'm probably still comparing it to something. Let me relax comparing. I'm not quite at the right quality of gentleness, compassion, curiosity. And you just sort of soften your practice, touching it from, and then it will tell you when you've touched it, when you've become part of it, when you're no longer, it's no longer separate from you, because it starts to go. It's as if you've been trying to touch an ice sculpture, but you don't realize what it looks like. And then suddenly say, oh, that sculpture is a wolf. And then the wolf goes, oh, now it knows me. She melts down into water. So it's really hard for our egos to understand a lot of things we feel. So this body-centered meditation is the basic ground of all meditation. It teaches you through the body how to deepen in your aware self, in the way you bring your awareness, the way you touch. And each breath, you can imagine the process just never ending. But because of the breath as your anchor, you can begin again with each breath. And you can surrender and relax and release with each out breath.
And it's important to be gentle with yourself. And we've emphasized that this is a practice. And the more you practice, again, it's like building that inner muscle of awareness to be able to stay present with whatever's here. Deeply presencing with love and compassion.
Find that breathing again, wherever you may have gone to, whatever you're feeling. Soft, noticing as you breathe in. Relaxing, releasing as you breathe out. When people are first learning this, first being invited to sit down and meditate, they have a lot of expectation about what they're supposed to be doing and how they'll be able to do it. And very quickly, people get discouraged. And often it's a voice that says, I can't do this. I better use it for my time. But that's the ego talking to you. And what is it? What's the sensation that's making it say that? Instead of tricking yourself into saying, oh, instead of collapsing into the me that says I can't do this, realize that there's actually a sensation there in the now of yourself. It's not that you can't do it. It's not any of that. There's just something unfamiliar, a little disturbing, confusing. So even if you just hear your mind saying, oh, today's not the day, I can't meditate today, oh, this doesn't work, oh, or that other kind of story, because you haven't meditated for a while, oh, I should meditate more. Just look at what that creates in you. You're back to that holding environment of unhappiness. So feel unhappiness. Let it be a friend. Let it be a welcome guest. Take your next breath. Feel dissatisfaction. Don't chase after satisfaction. Feel dissatisfaction. Hold it. Appreciate it. Gently, gently. It's just a sensation. It's just one of the instruments. But But if you stay at the center, if the center is me, then you will forever be chasing after satisfaction. More power, if that's what you're centered in. More possessions, if that's what gives you a sense of transient happiness. A hungry ghost in billions of people is destroying our planet. And it can never be satisfied. There won't be enough power. There won't be enough things. There won't be enough advances in technology. It'll never be satisfied. Until the dissatisfaction itself is a welcome guest. Something you can breathe with gently. Something that makes you eventually smile. And relax. Trust the wave. Breathe in through the bottom of your feet, all the way to the top of your head, and then down and out through your body. Find the wave. Feel the wave. Trust the wave. And then let it wash into and over everything. Let it hold and feel everything. And you'll feel the spaciousness, the quieting, as the places of holding return back to energy, free flowing.
Resting in the natural great peace of our being.
Right there in the center. You have to have a me to operate in the world. It was a miracle to have it in the first place. Or we'd still be infants, unable to care for ourselves. But now, this. Here. Rest in natural great peace. Give your exhausted mind a rest. Give the body a rest from the constant arousal of neurotic thoughts, the constant reacting to circumstances from the past. Rest in natural great peace.
And all the deepest longings of our soul are found within. They're not found without.
And when we can rest in this place in ourselves and meet others from this place in ourselves, and know others who are also learning to journey this way, then we become brothers and sisters in spirit. We start to have a shared heart, a shared deep morality. A true knowing of the goodness that is this.
The preciousness of it all.
And the unknown is not something to be afraid of. So when you feel that fear that you call the fear of the unknown, feel it, and gradually you'll realize that it's actually a form of love you haven't yet understood how to recognize. Even the unknown is love. So now, there's so much that we've spoken about in this meditation. It may have intruded on your real ability to dive, I'm not sure. But listen to it again, because it will give you such rich guidelines for your practice. And let's bring ourselves back. And as the world seems to be seething around us, now you deeply understand that all you're seeing, for example, in the riots last week in the capital of the United States, all you're seeing is people running around with me at the center and with very, very little or no capacity to hold the threatening or difficult or dark feelings. Someone always has to be blamed. And anger, 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 that's the primary defense. So you see that, you know what it is, you understand it. And when there's no ground in yourself, in your body, in your feeling, and through that into the deep morality that we're literally embedded in, that is the natural order, that is the Great Spirit. Then anything that seems logical can be believed because it's not starting from a foundation. So if you're thinking about what's happening out there, try to hold it with your heart with compassion, because even the craziness of the conspiracy theories is just simply because if you start with the premise that creates some form of fear in people, you can build logically on that premise in any way you want, and the left brain will believe it is true. And if the right brain isn't grounded enough, if we're not grounded enough in our bodies, in that shared language of our right cortex, our heart, deep feeling into the very moral fabric of existence, our heart, and in our bodies, which are ancient, evolutionally the evolutionary endpoint of the universe. So intelligent. If we don't have a ground there, you can believe that porcupines can fly. Quite literally. You know, certain people, medical care, they have terrible seizures. So there's a medical procedure, brain surgery, where they cut the connection between the left and the right cortex. It's called corpus callosum. Now you can isolate the right brain completely from the left brain, and people seem completely normal, except if you ask the left brain what the body is, it has no idea what that means. It basically will describe a junkyard. If you ask the left brain, is this your arm? It will say, I don't know. No, it's not my arm. And if you say to the left brain a simple syllogism like this, mammals can fly. Porcupines are mammals. Therefore, porcupines can fly. Did you laugh? Because if you did, that's your right brain that heard it, because it knows that's ridiculous, right? But for the left brain, porcupines can fly because there was that's logical, you see? And logic is reality for this part of our brain. When you sit in the center of the mandala, and you let yourself feel, you are balancing your left and right cortex, you're balancing your nervous system, and you're dropping into the full potential of consciousness, which is way beyond our brains. I'm sure of that. But our body is the brain. Mm-hmm. The body, the whole thing is the brain. And it's even smarter when there is profound intimacy between people. Then that field is even smarter, even more embodying. And I'm off on a riff when it's time to really ask Christian, were there questions, were there sharing on the...
I think there's 21 items on the chat.
Yeah. So I don't know whether that's a Zoom chat or... Okay, Christian.
Yes. Hello. We have questions. What do you see as the difference between the hungry ghost and the frequently used term, the seeking impulse?
I've not heard that term.
So. I've never heard the term seeking impulse. There is something natural inside of us. Because anything you're aware of, you are, in other words, not within the construct of me or the ego, but as we move into a deeper experience of ourselves as aware beings, as beingness, a conscious beingness, aware beings, anything we become aware of, we're intrinsically somewhat more than that. And so there is a naturalness with which smaller parts of ourselves or contracted parts of ourselves relax. That tendency to move ever gradually through awareness into expansive consciousness is not an active form of seeking. It's just a natural dynamic. So if there is dissatisfaction, unhappiness, inadequacy, and as a sensation it has not been held in you in the present moment, not been given a chance to become part of the orchestra, then you have maybe, like in the example I gave of a client who wants to be more present, but that actually is making the body tense. So that wanting, if it makes the body tense, that seeking impulse, if the body goes, if in that millisecond, the seeking impulse is met with some kind of tension, darkening, contraction, in the sensual aliveness of your being, then that is not seeking. That is not a seeking impulse. That is a wanting born of dissatisfaction. That's how I see it.
And the wanting born of dissatisfaction is the hungry ghost.
Right. And with one thing, when someone models for you or something awakens in you that causes you to aspire towards something, then you have to be very, very careful. Have I given my aspiration? My heart is opened, it's awakened, and now, quote, of course I don't want that to be limited. It is by its very nature limitless. The ego takes over of that experience because it lived it with you, it remembers, and then it says, oh, I want more of that. And then you go right back down the same road. You're not in your aware self. That's not true seeking anymore. That's not actually liberation. How you touch is liberation. So if you touch wanting more, that's not going to lead you to liberation. This is what I mean. It's an art. And when you start to realize the extraordinary richness and depth of the art of just sitting down to witness yourself and notice with that anchor in the body, every sensation is going to be your teacher, because it's going to teach you, you're either touching it so it returns back to living essence, limitless energy, a part of, or it becomes part of the contraction that is me and feeds it. So it's an endless practice, but it's so incredibly fascinating that it's very, very easy for you to want to sit, to want to discover that. And if that's the seeking impulse that's born, if you enjoy music, so you listen to music, I don't see that as a seeking impulse. But if you start enjoying the discovery of the miracle of yourself through self-observation, you'll keep wanting to do it. It's not dry. It's not, oh my God, it's not dry. It's musical. It's symphonic. It's art. It's a palette.
But in the beginning, it can be, I talk about, going from the oh shit to then realizing that it's fertilizer. and then in fact, now every time, like, for example, even though I had this sensation of I'm having a nervous breakdown, and then feeling like I wanted to jump out of my skin, I was like, oh, this is a treasure. There's something here. So, and then it just becomes much easier to really deeply presence with those uncomfortable sensations.
And I want to say something, just because when you say there's something here, that I glitch with that, because the something that's here depends on how you touch it. It is not something here. There's something that can be revealed, but the revelation, if you don't want it, that's one revelation. If you fight against it, that's one revelation. If you get up and decide to go down and pour yourself a glass of booze, or you're going to read the newspaper or read a book or put the TV on, that's not the same thing. You will get a revelation. You'll displace it. You'll repress it. You'll turn it into something else. You'll But I'm 74 tomorrow. When they elect Biden, by the way, if you're happy about Biden being elected, just realize that he's aware that it's my birthday. 74. And I just started beginning to sit down with all the reluctance and all the belief that it was supposed to do it, that this was going to wake me up, blah, 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 blah. And then I woke up. And then, oh my goodness, it's been work ever since. Except it's a different kind of work. You're training the aware self, and then that's growing up the ego, maturing the ego. It becomes truly a friend on the journey.
Big support, ally.
In a way, you can say that you're sitting at the center of the mandala, but as you've learned to sit with the me, you, past, future stories, you've learned to sit with the wanting, you've learned to sit with all the difficult feelings. Now the ego is here, and the future, and the past, and all moving into this more timeless, more eternal, and profoundly embodied consciousness that is so gentle. So the breath of God. What else do we have, Christian?
Well, now, of course, we have got some happy birthday wishes for Richard. That has to be fed in also.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And we've got another sharing on the theme of dissatisfaction. Someone says, so is acceptance of how I am the antidote for dissatisfaction? Like the acceptance of this painting I cannot seem to finish. Is it imperfect like me?
No? Nothing jumping?
No.
Yes. Yeah. Acceptance is a tricky word. How you touch is your acceptance. The quality of awareness you bring to something, that's your acceptance. Acceptance is a beautiful word, but for the left brain, it's just a word. For the right brain, for the beingness of a human being, it's a process. And you don't get to the end of acceptance. It's like, can you ever get to the end of listening to a profound and beautiful piece of music? You'll hear it and you'll hear it, and each time it'll be like new. You don't acceptance you don't get to the end of, but what happens is there's more and more space for something you had less and less space for, because how you touch creates more space or less space. And the where self process is how you touch. And when it has an anchor with the breathing in the body, then it's not just an abstraction. It's you can feel your breath awareness is the feather, is part of the feather of your touch, part of the curiosity of your touch, part of the gentleness and compassion of the touch, which you have to learn. If it's not a gentle, compassionate touch, you're not going to be accepting and limitless. So start with accepting it. Just say, hey, this has been around a long time. Hi, old friend. Welcome. There's a room in my house for you. Come on in. You don't get to be the conductor. I mean, when we teach, it's the actual time, the hours, the years that are behind what we're saying. And I know tomorrow I'll have to start like a beginner with some sensation possibly and just work my way with it. And it'll be something I've worked before, and it's not done. There's always a way to accept something more. And eventually, if it is done, it doesn't ever come back anymore. It's been released into your essence. It's been released into timeless, into source, and you are source.
And that's, for me, is true freedom. Just the liberation of our essential nature from the contractions and the way that we've shut down and closed ourselves off. And then in that freedom, in that liberation, I think it's this infinite play.
Yeah, because every time you have a bit of liberation or freedom in a fear that would make you less relational, then you have a deeper connection. It's inside yourself in the flow of your being, but it also enables this incredible, joyous companionship that's where the relational third is no longer 1 + 1 is 3. Kathy and myself and our relationship, that energy that's bridging, holding us, teaching us, guiding us, that we're creating and it's creating us. Sometimes it's 1 + 1 is hundreds, thousands. I mean, you just don't even know how to put a limit on it. And if that isn't a blessing to live your life for, if God created us to feel those kinds of things and share that closely with each other, that's a pretty astonishing God. And if you think it's a God that created you to feel beaten down and have to rebel, and that's a pretty shrunken God.
Be in fear of.
Be in fear of, right? Yeah, the
Not
laziness.
my God.
Nope, not mine either. So God is limitless too. Do you believe in God? But that would be like saying, well, first of all, if I could turn God into a stone, I'd believe in God. But God is the one thing you'll never turn into a stone, like awareness is, like your true self is. And yet they're all resonating in this place that gradually, there's a little more peace in us, a little more spaciousness, a little more reason for just feeling grateful to be breathing, grateful to be alive, grateful to touch and be touched. Anything else? We still have a few more minutes.
So someone says, no natural defenses to negativity leads to trigger of survival mechanisms. It takes practice to displace melodrama. Observation displaces melodrama.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The ego needs to put up defenses. Okay? Your personality, the structure of your me is a defense. It's also an instrument for consciousness to operate, but initially very limitedly. And most people's lives, it's very limited.
But it's an absolute and essential aspect of our being.
So gradually, you don't have to defend, because what you're defending yourself from is a sensation. And if the sensation for me used to be dreadful, the dread in my 20s, 30s, it became unsafety in my 40s, 50s, 60s. It became just a little offness. Every once in a while, it'll crescendo into unsafety again, and then it'll subside back. There's no need to be defended. There's no energy that's going to come from outside of you that's bad, unless it links to something you haven't yet made conscious in yourself and activates it. And then you have an opportunity to not only heal yourself, but heal whatever was the source from which that energy came. And of course, that's very, very deep work, maybe endless work. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to start in the now, because that's the only thing that's real. And in the now, you're starting with your sensation, your body's breathing. In the now, there's awareness. It's not me awareness, even though it needed me awareness to be activated in you. It's very directly linked. That's why the me starts to grow up and mature and become a friend and a servant and an ally. So yeah, whoever said that, that's the journey. You do actually have natural defenses. They're called me. And you'll digest your natural defenses. And, you'll still have a driver's license and it will refer to you, but that's not who you are. And you know it.
There's also another interesting observation and question here. Whenever I hear you say touch gently, I think of the exercise of the cross of gold, which was a profound and cherished experience for me. But is that not the very opposite of touching gently?
Just for people to know. So whoever was in the retreat that did that, I've asked people to stand like this, not like this, not like this, not like this, like this, in a group when they're really ready, when they've been prepared. And I've called the exercise the heart of compassion. Maybe in the early years, I called it the cross of gold. But because it's so very, very difficult, but really harmless, there is a moment when you touch it so softly that it becomes effortless. And interestingly enough, for most people, that doesn't usually happen until they've said no to it, fought it, put their arms down, used willpower, and fought, just you go through such a gigantic spectrum, and then suddenly, and you don't even know how you did it, you're touching it softly, and it becomes just gigantic space. And I have people do this exercise facing another person. And at that moment, hearts can meet in such a profound shared heart. Yes, it was an exercise of very strong intention to learn how to be very, very soft with something very difficult to feel. And it's paradoxical, but the person who's asking it, no, it's not. There's a readiness for an exercise like that in the work experientially when I offer it. I don't just drop it on people that I don't think are ready, that there's not enough foundation. And it is profound. It can be profound. And but it is about, in a split second, there will be a soft touch and you'll be liberated from the struggle. And if you felt that, and your heart opened at that moment with another, then you have something you'll never forget for the rest of your life, which is when we are dealing with something really, really difficult. It's more than just, oh shit, it's, oh my God. There can be a moment where it turns into the most luminous beauty. It's the same energy, but we have to touch it so that it can become that energy. And
maybe we'll be able to do another retreat sometime.
Yeah, we will. And don't be afraid of that exercise. I never make anybody do it. It's just an invitation. And then we support everybody. I know very well that that in a good context, those moments of deep change and breakthrough, they remain seeds inside of you. It's not like you can go back to that state of consciousness or that incredibly precious state, but it's left a residue in you, a flavor in you. It's a part of your sense of gratitude. It's a part of your sense of wonderment, and the seeds grow and they
knowing
grow.
that it's here.
Yeah.
It's a direct experience. It's deep knowing.
All of the work that I was doing for all those years and now that we do together is about getting us into that ground long enough for the seeds to really reach good soil. And then they grow. And being with you now is just another way to water those seeds and plant some new ones.
And we're out of time.
And we are out of time. All right, next week, I haven't even talked
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now. Well, next webinar, 2 weeks from now. I haven't even talked this over with you, Kathy, but I think we're going to really focus on this work in relationship. We're always talking about it, but we're going to really talk to you about some of the practices, in relational consciousness, from the aware self process into feeling intelligence, into relational intelligence and intimacy and the joy of it and the challenges of it and some of the skill sets you can use, some of the practices that will help you. Blessings, everyone.
Thank you for joining
let
us.
other people know about this, and so they can just sign up for it or find it on YouTube. You have to sign up if you want to be able to watch it live, but it no costs nothing. It's freely given. Blessings.
Thank you.